So in this video I'm going to show you how to factorize monic quadratics, but unlike the previous video where all of our signs were positive, this time we're going to look at what happens when we have a few negative signs and how to tell what the signs are going to be when we factorize. So let's look at what happens when we expand our sets of brackets, which will give us an indication of what happens to the signs. So if I use the distributive law, in FOIL we do first times first, so x times x is x squared. Then we do our outside terms, x times minus 4. Remember, when we multiply we have to take into account that sign, so a plus x times a minus 4 is minus 4x. Then we look at the second term in this bracket here, and we take that whole plus 3 and we times it by x, so the inside terms plus 3x, and then we take plus 3 times minus 4. A plus times a minus is a minus, 3 times 4 is 12. Then we collect the like terms, so we have x squared minus 4x plus 3x is minus x, and we've got minus 12. So that's our first example when we have a plus and a minus. Make sure that you see what happens when we collect these like terms in the middle. Now in this one we have a minus in both sets of brackets. So again we use the distributive law. X times x is x squared, and then we multiply our outside terms. X times minus 5 is minus 5x. Then we do our second term in the first set of brackets, so minus 3 times x is minus 3x, and minus 3 times minus 4. Minus times a minus is a plus, and 3 times 5 is 15. So as we did before, we check it out for like terms, making sure that you include the signs with those. So we have x squared minus 5x minus another 3x is minus 8x, and then plus 15. So that's expanding our brackets. So what we're actually going to look at is now how we factorize these terms. So if we've got these terms, how do we get it back into the brackets? So this is the factorizing part. So I'm going to go through 4 equations to show you all the different variations of the signs so that we can make some rules about what happens. So if I have my first equation with all pluses in it, which is the one we did in our previous lesson. So as I said previously, what we're looking for is the factors of 7, so two numbers that multiply to be 7 and add to be 8, which is pretty straightforward because 7 is a prime number, so the numbers are 1 and 7. 1 times 7 is 7, 1 plus 7 is 8. So in order to get our factors, we put our brackets, we look at our first term, it's x squared. So what two things multiply together to be x squared? That's going to be x and x, just the same as it was here. X times x is x squared. So we know that our factors of 7 are 1 and 7, so they multiply together to be 7 and add together to be 8. So these are the numbers that go in our brackets here. Because these signs are positive, both of these are positive. So when we multiply it out, x times x is x squared, x times plus 7 is 7x, and then we add the 1x there, so that gives us our 8x, and 1 times 7 gives us our 7 here. This is, we already did this one. So what happens when we start to get some negatives in our equation? So this equation looks exactly the same, except that we have minus 8 here. So again, we need to look at this number here, and we say, what are our factors of 7? It's a prime number, so they have to be 1 and 7. But you also know that if the factors are plus 1 and plus 7, they can also be minus 1 and minus 7. And that's how we get our minus 8, when both of these are negative. So if we have our brackets like this, we know that our first term is x. We know our numbers are 1 and 7, because they are the two numbers that multiply to be 7 and add to be 8. And now we know that because this is a minus 8, both of our terms need to be minus. So you'll know that I'll just show you, if we multiply this out, x times x is x squared, x times minus 7 is minus 7x, minus 1 times x is minus 1x, minus 1 times minus 7, a minus times a minus is a plus, 1 times 7 is 7. So these are our like terms. So we've got x squared minus 7 minus 1 is minus 8x plus 7. So you'll see in both of these equations where we have a plus here, both of our terms are the same, a plus and a plus, or a minus and a minus. Whether it's a plus or a minus is determined by this sign here. If this sign is a plus, both of our signs are pluses. If this sign is a minus, both of our signs are a minus. So that's what happens when we have a plus before our constant. So let's look what happens when we have a minus before our constant. So if I have, slide that up a bit more, x squared plus 6x minus 7. Okay, I'm using the minus 7 again because we know here that our factors are 1 and 7. So pretty much we know what's got to be in our brackets. X squared, x, and we've got to have a 1 and we've got to have a 7 because there cannot be any other factors. But the interesting thing is we know that it can be either minus 1 and plus 7 to get that minus there, or it can be plus 1 and minus 7. So that's what we need to decide. Minus 1 plus 7 is plus 6, or plus 1 minus 7 is going to be minus 6. So now we know that to get this, we must have this set of factors. So we now have minus 1 plus 7, minus 1 plus 7. So to check that out, x times x is x squared, x times plus 7 is plus 7x, minus 1 times x is minus 1x, minus 1 times plus 7, minus times a plus is a minus, 1 times 7 is 7. Collect our like terms, x squared plus 6x minus 7. So you'll see here when we have a minus before the 7, we've got different terms. When we had a plus before the 7, we had the same term in both sets of brackets. So the last variation is where we have a minus before the 6x. And given what we did in the previous one, it's going to be pretty easy to tell us what is going to happen. So we're going to have x in both brackets. Still, our factors of minus 7 are 1 and 7, but we know that we can have two forms of that, where it's minus 1 and plus 7, or plus 1 and minus 7. So because we have minus 6, we know that it can't be this because we use that here, so it must be this set of terms, plus 1 minus 7. So we put our 1 in our brackets, and we know that it has to be plus 1 minus 7. Now the way you can remember which number has to have the sign in it, if this is a positive, the biggest number is positive. If this is negative, the biggest number is negative. Okay, so I've got a worksheet, a flow chart that will help you work through this, and I'll go through that shortly.